You are listening to UpTalk with Shaun Taylor. The gloves are off, and it's time to have a chat.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the podcast. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Rest Ed Seminars out of Ontario. Rest Ed helps to raise awareness in the community and among medical, dental, and allied healthcare personnel with life-saving education on the disastrous effects of undiagnosed and untreated obstructive sleep apnea. Now, if you're like me, many first responders, sleep is really valuable, and a lot of us have trouble getting good sleep. This is what Rest Ed looks into and provides information on how to get the best sleep, as well as a few services, as well as you can find on their website. It was founded by Julia Worrell, who is a critical care and emerge nurse with 20 years experience in the sleep apnea field. You can look them up at www.restedseminars.com. Very happy to have them as a sponsor of the podcast. Listeners can go to their website and with the coupon code UpTalk can receive 10% off all purchases of their services. Included in that is a really special product called the CoPAP Pillow, which is a positional pillow. It looks like a lowercase n. You got to look this thing up. It looks awesome. I haven't received mine yet, but I am getting one, and I'll let you know how it works for me. It's a phenomenal product, and please, definitely check them out and look into it. And again, with the coupon code UpTalk, you can get 10% off all purchases. So thank you, Rest Ed Seminars, for coming on board. We're also brought to you by Dan's Son Photography. You may have noticed my cover page got an upgrade, a massive upgrade. Daniel Sundahl is a paramedic and firefighter of 13 years. He's also a huge mental health advocate. You may have seen his very emotional and powerful EMS-themed portraits using photography on the Dan Son Photography Facebook page. If you haven't, you need to go check this out. He does amazing work. You can look him up at www.dansonphotos.com. Very pleased to have him on as a sponsor as well. At the end of the year, we're going to be drawing a name from our guests that we've had on, and one lucky guest is going to receive a customized portrait from Dan Son Photography. So that's going to be really special. Can't wait to do that at the end of the year. Big thanks again to Dan Son Photography. And last but not least, we're also brought to you by Compass Rose Health and Wellness Center out of Bedford, Nova Scotia. They provide services that blur the line between purely physical care for the mind, will, and spirit. It's a truly holistic approach to full body health and well-being. I walked in there for the first time a few weeks ago, and as soon as you walk in, it's just an overwhelming feeling of calm and relaxation. I haven't been in a space like that before. They provide a one-stop shop for body work, massage, and other relaxation therapies that you can use independently or as part of your therapy process. You can find them at www.thecompassrose.ca. And we're in the middle of working out a coupon code and a little benefit for our listeners. So as soon as I get that confirmed and finalized, I will update you all. But please check them out at www.thecompassrose.ca. Thanks again to the sponsors for helping to make this podcast happen and providing good information for first responders everywhere on how to better take care of themselves. Well, folks, this episode is going to be special. It's a bit of a special edition. This is coming out on March 17th, which marks the 2-year anniversary of my employment being terminated after asking for help for PTSD. So it's a special date for me. So I've added an extra guest on this episode. This episode is going to be a little bit longer than normal, just to give a real power-packed information episode. It's going to be excellent. We have a chat with Todd Doherty, Member of Parliament, talking about Bill C-211, which looks to provide a national framework for first responders who are dealing with PTSD. We also have great chat with Jamie McWhirter. You may know him from PTSD Buddies on Facebook, the creator of that support group. Jamie and his wife are actually on the podcast talking about Jamie's story, and Jamie's wife gives us some insight into what it's like for a spouse of someone with PTSD. So that's a great conversation. Also, we have a chat with Shaun Taylor of the hashtag I've Got Your Back 911 phenomenon on Facebook. And also we have, as usual, Dr. Robin McGee on the podcast. And this month she's going to teach us about EMDR Therapy and what that's all about and what it can do for people with PTSD. So, without further ado, let's get on with it and let's get this chat started. At this time, it's with great pleasure I'd like to introduce our listeners to Mr. Todd Doherty, who is a Member of Parliament representing Cariboo Prince George, British Columbia, and recently, on January 28, 2016, introduced a private member's bill, C-211, which relates to post-traumatic stress disorder. Before we get into that, Mr. Doherty, I just want to welcome you and say hello and see how you're doing.
Hey, thanks, Shaun. It's great to be here. Just landed and good to be back in Cariboo Prince George. I love being in Ottawa, but home is where the heart is, and It's always good to be back home.
No, that's for sure. Before we dive into the meat of that bill, Todd, I just want to know if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became interested in the topic of PTSD.
Sure. Early in I'm going to date myself here in the late 80s, mid to late 80s. I did a lot of work in social work, crisis and counseling, suicide prevention, peer counseling, set up teen crisis line that really dealt with kids, teenagers at their most vulnerable. Right. Worked with at-risk youth as well too, and it was a time when nobody really wanted to talk about suicide because for fear that there'd be copycats, and I was just a kid myself, and I didn't last too long in it, but I fell backwards. I always say I fell kind of ass backwards into aviation and spent 20 plus years in aviation, in a range of jobs, or a range of roles, I should say, both Transport Canada, airline side of it, owner side of it, in terms of owning my own aviation company, and then really jumped forward in the airport business and then represented Canada on the world stage in terms of trade and aviation development, and would work with countries and airlines, getting them business ready to come into Canada, promoting Canada, but also worked with agencies, interagencies in terms of, I guess, securing our borders, securing our ports and airports, and our airlines. Got interested, it's the work that I undertook in the 80s and the training that I undertook in the 80s, the schooling that I had, I really used, although not being in the social work field, I used the skills that I learned. Right. In the teachings that I did, whether it was coaching kids, minor sports. I'm an avid volunteer, and I've coached minor sports, for a very long time, all the way up to junior, and used that mentoring and counseling skill set that we learned early on in that, in those fields as well.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, you've had quite an interesting background for sure. Right. I mean, and so you come to January 28, 2016, and you introduce this private members bill, which is labeled C-211. Right. Tell us about that. What is that all about?
Well, I'll take you back a little bit further. So I have a number of friends that are veterans, also RCMP and in the firefighting as well as corrections. Right. And I know the stressors. I had a stepfather that was an RCMP and saw it firsthand growing up, some of the stressors that they, as well as my stepfather, went through every day. Right. And about a year ago January, after getting the nomination, some good friends of mine that are in the local firefighters union here locally came to me and said, look, wanted to share with you some concerns that we have as an industry, and really hope that, while you're just a candidate right now, that if you are elected, you really would have an opportunity to try and help us move some things forward in terms of, or at least champion. and they started talking about PTSD, and I'm very familiar with that. We have a Paul and Terry Nichols just to the south of us in a town called Cornell that rode their horses across Canada last year to bring their organizations called Communities for Veterans, bring the faces of today's veterans to our communities, and as well as also start talking about PTSD and what that looks like. Because today's veteran is much different than, it's not just the 80-year-old or the 60 or 70-year-old that served in some of our bigger wars. It's the 19, 20-year-olds that are coming in as well too. And so I've had the opportunity to sit and meet with, a number of veterans, but also, our firefighters and our police officers. And, when you're hearing the stories that they deal with every day, whether it's, it could be as simple as a traffic incident that they roll up onto, and then that quickly escalates into something more violent, or the human tragedy that they experience every day. So over the year leading up to the campaign and into the campaign, did a lot of work on trying to get at least a framework in place so that should we be elected on the 19th, on the 20th, we could hit the ground running. And I got into Ottawa on the 26th, and I met for the very first time, 26th of October, I met for the very first time with the parliamentary legal department and said, I really would like us to start looking at putting this together in terms of a bill for developing a national framework for PTSD.
Right on.
And so it took a considerable amount of time for my team as well as the organization or the parliamentary legal team to really put together the framework. We this was such a priority for us. We introduced 3 other bills prior to that because we had some other ones that we're very fond of, but this is really the one that we really would like to push this forward. As you said earlier offline, it is a lengthy process, but this is one that I think is it's a win-win for everyone, and it's something that's desperately needed, and would at least put some confidence and assurances that regardless of the government that's in place, there's a law in place that there should be a federal framework. Well,
certainly needed, absolutely needed. So if this were so what does this bill look to do? What is the biggest impact that we would see as a?
Well, I think, as you know, there are a number of organizations, both provincially, nationally, that are doing some great work. We've got a couple provinces now that have come on with presumptive legislation.
Right.
My bill Bill C-211 would call for a national framework to be developed regarding PTSD as it relates to veterans, first responders, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, and corrections officers. And really the idea with that is let's bring everyone under one house, one umbrella. Let's get consistent terminology. Let's get consistent resources there. Again, we were in a public safety committee study last week, and from one medical professional to the next, one is saying, well, it can be cured, and the other person's saying, well, no, it's a trauma. You can't take that trauma away from a person. You can give them better coping mechanisms, but nobody will ever be cured of PTSD. They will be able to lead healthy, productive lives. But so even within our own academics and medical
there's a little bit of differing.
Yeah, I think the great thing, Shaun, is that people are now talking about it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the point. That's the biggest hurdle.
That is the biggest thing, and I think since I introduced the bill on the 28th of January, we've had some just incredible discussions with those that are in charge, the police chiefs, the fire chiefs, as well as administrators, and then those on the front line. And I think the biggest thing that we want to get away from is the stigma.
Right.
That you don't have to be ashamed to say that you're not well, or you don't have to be ashamed to say that you need help, and you won't be deemed weak. And you're not going to be deemed as faking it. I think the biggest thing also is that we give we give those that are suffering a voice. We allow them to tell us that they're hurting.
Right.
But on the other side, we're giving those that are in charge, we're giving them the tools and resources to be able to ensure that, our men and women, regardless of who or what they do, are given every opportunity to lead those healthy lives.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big thing. I mean, the work, first responders themselves are starting to talk about it more and more. It's becoming more normalized. Yeah. We need to bring, the maturity level of organizations and corporations. We need to, like you said, give them the resources, give them some leadership from government to show them how to better serve these members and employees that come to them and say, I need some help.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's the big fear, right?
And that's the first step, is getting people, again, we have to give people the confidence that when they say, or they cry for help, or they say help, that we're going to be there, we're going to understand and be able to effectively manage the issue for them and with them. And, again, it's not a sign of weakness, to ask for help.
Strength. It takes so much energy to get
100%.
To that point as help.
I think you're a stronger person when you can say, look, I can't do this.
Right.
I think, again, those that run towards danger when the rest of us would run away, there are silent sentinels, and by nature of the industries that they're in, they're macho industries. But,
right.
When you experience human tragedy day in, day out, whether it's the smells, the sounds, just the flashes, it really wears on somebody, and we all deal with it differently.
Absolutely. That's right. It's true.
One person can see 100 of the same things. You could have two people marching in lockstep together, experience exactly the same thing, and one is going to deal with it completely different than the other. And just because they're struggling with what they're seeing and experiencing doesn't make them weak.
Right. And just because they're surviving, and still at work, doesn't mean that they're not in need of help.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing that we need to make sure that we're looking at is, we can be the best actors as well too. Talking to a few gentlemen this past week, and we can make sure that our supervisors can check off that checklist that no sign of conflict, doing well, no stressors, right? And then when we go home, that's really when things happen. And I think we have to make sure that we're arming the families also with the tools and the resources, so that if they see something, out of whack or that of concern, they can get help, because the last thing we want to see is another loss of life.
Absolutely. There's been far too many. For something that I think we can really make an impact on, and we can start making some headway, we need to start doing that.
I agree.
You mentioned, Todd, us, who aren't involved in government a lot, probably don't understand just the amount of time it takes to get a bill, if it is successful, through all the different stages that it needs to go through. Are you able to walk us through that, if everything were to go as you'd like it to?
First off, you can have a member of parliament, and they could go you could be a member of parliament for a number of terms and never have the opportunity to introduce a bill, or see a bill through.
Okay.
Anybody can introduce one. But what happens is your names go in, all 338 members of parliament, names go into a hat, and it's a lottery. And really what happens is you want to draw, if not the first 30, you want to draw the first 50, because the lower the number, the more opportunity you're going to have to actually introduce the bill onto the floor.
Right.
And so I drew number 50, so I drew a fairly low number, and so that means we have a very good chance of actually debating the bill. And my hope is that, we do the work that we're doing now, that when it comes time to debating, that the bill hits the floor for the second reading, that it unanimously passes. It would then go to Senate for royal assent, and we would have the Senate who would do their work as well too, to make sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and they're there for a reason, to make sure that, again, have that spirited debate where we can say, have you thought about this, or can we consider this?
And sort of like a form of oversight.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, we built the bill, knowing that, ultimately I want to have that conversation. I want to be able to bring this to the floor, and I want to have members of the House from all parties have the opportunity to talk about this bill and be able to say, share the experiences, talk about it. Maybe there are things that we left out, or maybe there's things that we should be doing to make it a little bit harder hitting or more definitive. We had a great team that put the bill together, and it is fairly it's fairly structured and looks into most things. But again, another set of eyes and other people that are coming at it. Maybe there's something that we didn't think of.
Absolutely. How have you found so far the support, whether it be within government and from the community in general of first responders? How have you found the support so far?
Well, the support's been overwhelming from, all parties. We've had some great discussions within both the NDP as well as Liberal, and obviously within my party as well. And outside, there is cautious optimism, because I think people have seen something or have had hopes built before, and then for it to be dashed. And so they clearly don't know me very well, because I'm the type that likes to bang down the door, and then I'll beg forgiveness later on.
Well, that's exactly what we need. So perfect.
I said this before, that if anything else, if this is the only thing that I managed to get done in my 3.5 years left, or 4 years here, I will have considered this a success, because I believe this will save a life. And if we save one life, we've been successful. So this is something that, it's, over the course of my lifetime, I've experienced a lot of things and seen a lot, but I can't tell you the shocking or the, how it pulls on your heartstrings when you hear families of first responders or veterans that are dealing with this, and they just want their mom or dad or brother or sister better. And,
that's right. Yeah. I know things take time. It can get frustrating sort of when you're waiting for that red tape, but we understand these things do take time. Is there anything that our listeners can do to help this process?
Yeah, I think the biggest, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about what we're doing. We need to make sure that people know about this bill that is potentially coming down the wire, and we need people to really let, the government know about this. And here's my mindset with this, is that, look, it doesn't have to be, it's not a conservative thing. It's not a Liberal thing. It's not an NDP thing. It's not a Todd Doherty thing.
It's a human thing. It's
a human thing, and it's the right thing to do. But what this bill allows us to do, that regardless of what government's in place today or tomorrow or down the road, there's a legal framework in place to make sure that we have a national strategy, that it continues. And that, for me, is the most important thing, is that regardless of where we are, who's doing it, that we put framework in place that continues beyond tomorrow, because we need to make sure that we're focusing on this. So to answer your question, we need people tweeting about Bill C-211, Facebooking, sharing it. They can come to my Facebook, Todd Doherty MP, or my Twitter account, Todd Doherty MP as well. And you'll see the stuff on there that we're posting. We need to get people talking about this, and we need to be sharing it. And then as we move forward with the news articles and the press, we need people talking about this even more. And as always, people can reach out to me at todd.doherty@parle.gc.ca.
Okay.
And share their stories with me. And, when it comes time that we get to committee where we're talking, openly about this, I want people to share their stories so that others hear that and understand fully why we're doing what we're doing.
Right. I mean, as well as, getting in contact with you, probably I would ask all my listeners, get in contact with your local MP and make sure that, you're hoping for this, you're holding them to this as far as you're looking for their support for this bill when it comes down to the time to show it.
It's a great idea.
Excellent. So, we've already heard your, how we can contact you, Todd. I thank you for that. What, just to sort of in closing, if you had a message for the first responders, in Canada, what would you say to them, the ones that are struggling or may struggle with PTSD and their families?
Well, I get a little emotional when I start talking about it because, I know what you're going through. And, I think I want people to know that whether you're in the fog right now or you seem to think that there isn't hope, there is hope, and there are people that are fighting for you. And, I think beyond anything, I want people to know that they've got a voice and they have a champion, and we're doing everything we can. We want people to know that it's okay to say that you need help.
Perfect. I mean, that's perfect. That's the message we're trying to get out. And I want to thank you so much, Todd, for coming on and telling us about the Bill C-211, and thank you for the work that you're doing and bringing us a voice on the federal level to try to get some changes made so that we can feel safer to talk about the issues that we have, that so many of us have. They say up to 30% of first responders will deal with PTSD, which is, an astronomical percentage of us when you consider the thousands and thousands of first responders that there are nationally. And so I just want, on behalf of all of them, I want to thank you for your work and let you know that if there's anything that the podcast or myself or our listeners can ever do to help you, you just have to reach out and say the word. And, and we'll be there. Just, the words aren't enough, but I just want to thank you. That's all I can say is thank you so much, and we do appreciate it very much.
Hey, Shaun, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about this. It's really important, and I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about this and the offer of help. I'll take you up on it. We need to get this out here, and we need to get it through. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
I'll tell you, I'm much like you. I will go through doors if there's doors to go through. So, I wish you all the best, Todd, and please, be safe in your travels between Ottawa and Caribou, Prince George, and I hope to talk to you very soon when we can talk about this bill being reality.
Awesome. Thanks, Shaun. I really appreciate it. You have a great week.
Thanks.
Thanks. Take care.
You too. All right, everybody. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to Jamie and Vanessa McWhirter, coming to us from St. John's, Newfoundland. Jamie's a member of the Canadian Forces. Jamie and Vanessa, how are you today?
We are living a dream.
Awesome. Vanessa, how are you?
Doing well, my love. Doing well.
Excellent. Jamie, before we get into all the things that you are involved with, can you just give us a little, not little, because I know it's you have a lot of information, but a history on you and how PTSD has affected you?
Yeah, well, I've been in the Canadian Forces for, I'll just say, a long time. And but in 2006, I was sent over to Afghanistan as an MSc UP, which is just a special, crazy, cool word for a driver. And so while I was over there, I got attached to the PBCLI, and I was their refuel driver. The PBCLI needed to go further into Taliban country, and they needed someone to drive a truck full of fuel, so their lads and everything wouldn't run out of fuel and gas in there, right?
Right.
So that was me. I drove a tanker truck. I was carrying 10,000 liters of diesel.
Wow.
And I would go into these zones, these combat zones with the PBSLI. And let me just say, man, the Canadian infantry, man, they're amazing.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. I can't say enough good things about the PBCLI and the RCR in Canada. But, I was a refuel driver, and I got hit a few times. I was actually RPG'd in it, and luckily for me, it struck the wheel well of my tire and didn't hit the actual tanker or the truck itself. It hit the tire.
Wow.
It blew my tire off, but I had a lot of close calls.
Huh.
And I came home, and I knew there was something wrong right away. I ended up going to the grocery store 2 days, Shaun, after I got home. I went to the grocery store and had my first panic attack. And I know now, dealing with PTSD, I found that grocery stores apparently are one of the for a lot of people, PTSD is the first time they have a panic attack is a grocery store. I don't know what it is about groceries, but
that's happened to me too, and it's such a weird thing because it's just you're getting your grocery list, and it seems like such a simple task that you did before, and for some reason it's so overwhelming.
I've heard from so many people about having panic attacks in grocery stores, and that was where I had my first one.
Wow!
I passed out on mine and fell into a bunch of honeycombs, boxes of honeycombs. Yeah, but after that, I raced home and I went into hiding for weeks.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go outside. People I was even on tour with. They would come to my door and my blinds were shut, my door was locked. I wouldn't even answer the door. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't turn on the radio. I just sat in the darkness.
Yep.
I don't know.
I know what that feels like too. Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah. So I lived with that for years. I always hid it away. I mean, I used to go to work in the military, and I see guys who would have medical chits on like a bad foot or a bad back,
right?
And they would be made fun of for it.
Yep.
And I'm thinking to myself, man, I don't have any of these problems. My problems is I can't sleep at night, and I'm yelling at my family, and I'm depressed all the time. Like, how do I go and give these problems to my superiors when people with broken bones are getting made fun of? So I hid it for years, and for years my family paid the toll of it.
Yes.
And then someone gave me the idea. Like when I was overseas, I kept a journal. And it wasn't just writing down my stories. If something happened to one of my friends, I wrote it down.
Oh, wow.
I just felt like it needed to be documented.
Right.
So my therapist at the time said, why don't you try writing some of these stories? You obviously like writing. You were keeping a journal overseas and everything. You like writing. Take one of these stories and write it out in your own words. So that's what I did. I wrote it out each day, pick out one day and write it out. And within a few months, I had like 40 stories wrote out, and my wife was like, maybe you should put it all together in one book. It'd be something great for the kids. That's what my first book was meant for. It wasn't meant to be published. It was meant just for the kids.
Oh, wow. What's that book called, Jamie? What's that book called?
A Soldier's Tale, a Newfoundland soldier in Afghanistan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it was meant just for my kids. I said, I want them to know why their dad is a pain in the butt or a loud, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I really wanted my kids to know about PTSD.
Right.
So, but when it was done and I read it over and I gave it to my sister and everything to read over, I was kind of pushing, saying, maybe we should try to publish this. Why not? And I sent it to DRC Publishing here in St. John's, and they thought it was amazing. And it sold really well. I can't believe it. We're almost up to 5,000 copies.
Wow, that's awesome.
And what I'm told, because it's based on a true story, if 5,000 copies sell, it'll make it a Canadian bestseller. So we're very close.
Holy smokes, that's awesome.
Right now, in a few months, Part 2 is coming out. I got Part 2 done to the book.
Oh.
And a lot of people are looking forward to Part 2 because Part 2, in Part 1, it's mostly about my tour. I talk a little bit about my PTSD in the end, but everybody after the first book came out wants to know about Part 2 and wants to know what happens after the tour and about PTSD, and that's what this is. This talks about my anger, my anxiety, my attempt at suicide.
Wow.
A lot of people don't know that yet, but right. It's all in this new one. It should be the latest June.
Jamie, that's going to help so many people.
Yeah, I'm hoping. When I finished the book and I looked it over, I said to myself, if there's somebody out there that I wanted to explain what PTSD was, I would give them this book. This is my PTSD in 10 chapters. And if I wanted someone to understand what PTSD was and what I was going through, I would want them to read this book.
Wow.
A lot of people don't like the first book more because it's the action and it's the Afghanistan. But if you want someone to know about PTSD, you're going to want to read this next book.
Well, you just jumped to the top of my gonna read list. I'll tell you that right now. So I'll have to check that out. So you went through that, and then at some point you decided that you wanted to help other people through this support group.
What happened when the book was released?
Yeah.
I started doing interviews and stuff. An organization in Toronto called the Tema Cantor Memorial Trust.
Yeah.
Fund, I think it is. Yeah. They contacted me. Vince Savoy got in contact with me, and a gentleman by the name of Gord Gilmore got in contact with me.
Okay.
And they asked me if I would be willing to speak publicly about PTSD and share my story, because they were doing a tour across Canada called Heroes Are Human.
Right.
And so I said yes, and they started their tour in St. John's, Newfoundland, and I started the tour with them. That was the first time I spoke. And
how'd you find that?
Well, in the military, I've been an instructor before, so I was kind of used to standing in front of people.
Right.
But to stand in front of people and admit to people you have a problem, right? It was hard. Every time I did it, I broke down, because I'd always share a couple stories from Afghanistan. And with PTSD, I mean, anyone who's listening and has PTSD will know what I'm talking about. That you have a hard time controlling your emotions.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, man, I watched a Cialis commercial before, and there was this father and son moment, and I started tearing up. Oh my God, I can't watch a Cialis commercial.
It happens to me all the time. I'll just start crying. We're watching TV, something totally benign, and I'll just start crying. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like trying to watch movies or something with your two sons, right? And you got tears running down your face.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So then this whole PTSD Buddies came about.
Yeah, I was doing the speeches and doing wherever I could, and a lot of people really wanted to hear me talk. It was amazing. And every time I spoke, I would meet people with PTSD or meet people who were dealing with someone with PTSD, and I would spend so many hours just talking with them. And every time I talked with them, I would learn something new. And I would always tell them, find me on Facebook, stay in contact. I'll always help you if I can. And everybody did. And the emails started coming and the messages. And there was so much going on, and so many people messaging me. I had a hard time keeping up with it all.
Right.
So I said, I wish there was some way that I could just connect everybody together here. And they could all just, lean against each other. Instead of all coming to me, maybe they could all just go to each other and we could all help each other somehow. Yeah. So then we said, maybe if we could make a group on Facebook. I said, since I got contacts with all these people, because there was a few hundred of people contacting me. I said, if I could just point them all into a Facebook group. So that's what I did. Yeah. I created a Facebook group called PTSD Buddies. And I sent requests to all these people who I knew and I met with PTSD.
Right.
And it started working, Shaun, right away. I think it was like the second day of PTSD Buddies on Facebook, a lady who I never met, she was having a panic attack and felt suicidal and posted it on PTSD Buddies.
Yes, I've seen those posts. Yeah, for sure.
And then another member commented on it, and then another member commented, and within seconds, she found somebody to talk to, and she was finding help right away and getting tips on how to deal with what she's going through. Wow. And she felt better, and and I see it every day when I go on this Facebook group. Right now, we're almost at 1,600 members, I believe it is.
That's awesome.
We had to make more PTSD buddy groups. There's a USA, there's a Canada.
Yeah, I've seen you broken it up into regions and the countries.
Yes. Well, what happens is you get a message from 8 different people saying, I wish there was a UK group. Okay, I'll make one. I'll put all 8 of you in the group, and then you watch it grow. And then we put at least one member who's in the UK as the admin, and you watch them grow. And then I started hosting meetings in St. John's. I host a meeting here for PTSD every Sunday from 2 to 4. And a lady named Peggy out in Barrie, Ontario contacted me and said, I would like to host meetings here. So she found a location. She got a social worker who comes every PTSD Buddies that host a meeting. We try to have at least a social worker or someone in the mental health field, a professional.
Yeah.
So that's why there's only meetings in 4 different locations. There's the ones who've have a doctor or someone in the mental health field there. But right now there's 4 locations across Canada that's hosting meetings.
That is so awesome. That's perfect. Yeah.
We created a PTSD Buddies Francais or Francophone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got a good buddy of mine who I work with in the military who's running it. I don't speak French, so I had to let him do it. We have a PTSD Buddies Junior.
Oh, wow.
That we started because we found, there are kids out there who have parents who have PTSD, and who can they turn to? And of course, there are kids out there themselves who have PTSD. So PTSD Buddies Junior, and it's the admin for it. I'm not going to say her name, but there's a lady who's the admin for it, who has a background with dealing with teenagers with PTSD.
Oh, great! And
I'm trying to find a child psychologist to actually be the admin to go with her, but that's a work in progress. But it's for ages 13 to 18, Shaun.
Wow! And
it's just somewhere for kids to go. My son is a member of PTSD Buddies Junior.
Wow, that's amazing. That is so good, and there's no better way to use social media, the way that it can tie everybody together, than it is, to be able to bring everybody to support each other. That's the best use of it.
Yeah.
It's so great that we have that.
Yeah, I think for PTSD, one of the hardest things a person with PTSD is going to do is admit to a family member that they have PTSD.
That's right.
But once you do it, and once, I'm not going to say if you do it, that family member's going to understand, because they might not understand right away.
Right.
But I promise you, if you admit to that family member that you have PTSD, and you and that family member work it out, that you understand, and the family member understands, that is the trick.
Wow. Yeah.
That is the key, man. I am telling you right now. I'm going to tell you right now, Shaun, nobody else knows this except for my wife and my doctor. Last weekend, I had a breakthrough with my own PTSD. And it took my 7-year-old son to do it.
Really?
My 7-year-old son doesn't even know he did it. But I'll tell you what happened.
Yeah.
When I first started talking about PTSD, yes, I got a lot of fans sending me, thank yous and things like that. But I also got the haters sending me messages.
Really?
Yes. There are still people out there who don't believe PTSD is real.
Wow.
Right? There are people out there who don't agree with it. Right?
Huh.
And they let me know.
Wow.
Right? And I tell you, Shaun, it used to get me down.
Right.
And I would question what if I was doing the right thing by doing PTSD Buddies. PTSD Buddies, in my mind, got shut down a few times because of people sending me hate mail. A few weeks ago, I got the sacrifice medal, Shaun.
I heard that, March 8th.
Yes. Now, if people out there who don't know what the sacrifice medal, it's a medal given to soldiers who are injured in battle. Now, when this medal is given to somebody, it's usually given in a private setting with your family.
Right.
Right? Well, when I did it, they opened the House of Assembly here in St. John's, and it was at the government house, and they had a guard there, with their weapons and their uniform, and the Premier of Newfoundland came out, and Admiral Newton, Rear Admiral Newton came down from Halifax, and the news and everything, it was all there for mine. Right?
Absolutely.
Now, in saying that, it went all around that, hey, Court McWhirter got the sacrifice medal for PTSD. So I had a lot of people with PTSD very excited that finally, I'm not saying I'm the first, but I'm the first to see, I've seen it on the news anyway,
right.
For PTSD and the sacrifice medal. So people were excited about it. But yet again, there were haters who were not happy that a soldier got it for PTSD. And they let me know that, hey, PTSD isn't a real injury, so you probably shouldn't have deserved the sacrifice medal. You know what? Yeah, so this is what I heard.
Oh, my God.
Again, it got me down, and it questioned me. I questioned it. Did I deserve it?
Right.
And so I turned to my PTSD buddy, my best friend, my wife, and I talked to her about it. And, we're going back and forth, and, do I deserve it and everything? And my son, Cody McWhirter, my 7-year-old son, overheard me talking about what people think. And he walked out, and geez, I'm going to tear up talking about it. He walked out.
I'm going to tear up you talking about it.
He said, Dad, I don't care what people think of me. Why do you care what people think of you?
Wow.
And it was like a switch. And I said to myself, he's right. Why do I care? The only people I should care about is Vanessa, Avery, and Cody. I should only care about what they think of me. Do I really care about all these people who are hating on me? These people who I have never met.
Right.
Why am I letting them get to me? If I'm letting them get to me, they're going to win.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that's what haters do. I'm letting them win. And you know what happened? He said that. I took him to the mall, Shaun. Jamie McWhirter, the guy who has social anxiety, went to the mall on a Saturday.
Ooh.
And we walked around that mall for hours. And the only reason I left is because my feet hurt.
Yeah. Wow, that is fantastic.
We stood in line at Booster Juice, and I didn't mind. And the mall was packed. It was Saturday. I had no anxiety whatsoever.
And that was something that you normally would not have been able to do.
I haven't done that in 8 years.
Whoa.
8 years. No, wait, sorry, 9. 2007. I would always need someone with me, or I just wouldn't go to the mall. But Shaun, after I left the mall on the way home, I said, Vanessa, what are we doing for supper? And she said she didn't know. So we went to the grocery store. Now, when we got to the grocery store, she was reading a Goosebumps book to Cody in the truck. And Cody didn't want to stop reading. So I said, you guys stay in the truck. I went into the grocery store by myself and got all my things. And I stood in line up in a packed grocery store. No anxiety. Now, Shaun, I'm not saying this is going to last.
Right, yeah.
But whatever my son said to me that day made a switch go off in my head. And it's almost like, I want you to hate. Good. I hope you do hate.
Use it as fuel, for sure.
Yeah. I'm almost getting off on it now, like, go ahead, hate me.
Wow.
Right? And I'm glad I got the sacrifice medal. I'm proud I got the sacrifice medal. If you don't like it, I don't care.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you don't think PTSD is real, I don't care what you think. It is real. And I'm going to keep on yelling it that it's real, because there's a lot of people out there suffering in silence, and I'm proud to talk for them.
Absolutely. I mean, you certainly deserve that medal.
I appreciate that.
I know, just you telling that story and hearing about the medal, I'm just meeting you here today. I'm proud of you. I'm sure that our listeners are proud of you. You are certainly an inspiration to first responders, and specifically any member of the Canadian Forces should be looking to you, because you're actually, the sign of strength. If anybody wants to see what strength looks like, they need to look to you.
I appreciate that, buddy.
And I truly believe that.
I'm going to be making visits around Canada in May. Right now I'm booked from St. John's, Newfoundland, all the way to Fredericton, but I'm hoping to get all the way across Ontario, too.
You need to come to Halifax.
Human tour.
You need to come to Halifax. We need to meet up.
I will be in Halifax. I'm already booked for Halifax.
Oh, perfect.
But the Tema Heroes Are Human tour?
Yes.
That's starting. I'm one of the speakers on that tour this year. And
that's gonna be fantastic.
I am booked all the way to Fredericton so far. The only reason why I'm only booked to Fredericton so far is after that it's Quebec.
Right.
I don't speak French, so
yes.
The Tema Foundation is not sure. Maybe what am I going to do in Montreal, right?
So they can get you an interpreter. So that's fine. But
can we get one of those ones that does sign language?
That's right.
Be awesome,
something.
because I'd like to see if they can do Newfoundlandese.
We got to get that set up. I love to see that too. Now, the other side of this chat has to do with your wife Vanessa. Vanessa, you're with us?
Yes, I am.
So, Vanessa, you have an opportunity here to give us a point of view that we haven't heard yet on the podcast, and that's the point of view of a spouse looking at someone that care about going through PTSD. Can you talk about that in general, what that was like for you?
Before she starts, I just want to say that we realized that the importance of hearing from the spouse. And Vanessa's actually now when I speak public, she gets on stage with me and she shares the point of view of the spouse.
That's excellent. That's perfect.
Point of view of the spouse. Well, first of all, him going to war was one of the most difficult things. At the time, we were not together. He had wanted to go to war individually because he didn't know what the circumstances were going to come. So that right there was a struggle and a half, because listening to the news, you would hear about somebody over there die, and 3 days later they would finally release the name of the person who had got injured or did not make battle. So it was very, very tough, and it was a big struggle. So news is not my friend. I can no longer watch the news because it's very, very depressing, and it's unfortunate because there's so much going on right now in our society that it's, put a damper on life itself. But truly to understand and coming out with his diagnosis of PTSD was a struggle, because admitting that you've got a problem is the first step, and we all know that that's the most difficult step to take.
Now, Vanessa, had you been telling him, like, would you go through this whole thing with, there's something wrong, there's something going on, and did you have to push it all to get it going?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There was struggles. There was fights. Right. There was a lot of push. Right. But there was also a lot of him having to realize that he's got to do it. As much as I can tell him, as much as I can push, I can only do so much. But he's the one who has to take the step. Because lots of people that go out there, and this is one of the things about getting help, aren't completely honest, aren't completely truthful about all the things that are going on.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the help doesn't work the same way.
Right.
They're not getting the proper help. So, that he was going to get help, but again, it was getting him to admit everything to the doctor that was going on. And it took me actually going with him to the doctor to start opening up a few more doors to getting the appropriate help that's needed.
I was scared to admit everything.
Absolutely, for sure.
It's very hard, right? Because people, you've got that judgment. Are they looking down on me?
Right. I was honestly scared about losing my job.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of the ones.
That was a big risk at the time.
I mean, I joined the military on my birthday. On my 70th birthday, I joined the reserves when I was old enough.
Yeah.
That's all I ever wanted to be, was a soldier. And to lose it, I was terrified to lose my job.
Yeah, and that's a fear that I think is one of the last. That'll be one of the last few fear barriers to overcome with this issue, I think. I mean, it was obviously an issue for me, and it was. And I get messages all the time from people who are terrified. I mean, obviously there's a talk with your family, a talk with your doctor, talk to your peers, but the talk with your employer, who could take away your opportunity to put food on the table, is terrifying, for sure.
Absolutely.
Vanessa, just to give you an example, like, I know that, or I can assume, I don't want to say I know how she feels, but I mean, my wife Amanda, I know it has to be frustrating, and I don't know another word for it, to see me, I'll have, weird emotional reactions in situations that shouldn't, I shouldn't have reactions to. I'll start to cry when, seemingly there's nothing going on, or I'll get really angry, or I'll get really anxious, or, and there's no real rhyme or reason to it day to day.
It's a roller coaster all in its own.
How did you cope with that, or learn to cope with that?
Well, it's a matter of, we are still coping with it.
Right.
You know yourself that this is not an easy path. This is not one that is fixed instantly, in that it's a struggle. It's a work in progress. It's just like a relationship. It's just like raising children. You got to keep at it. The biggest thing is educating yourself as much as you can. right?
Right.
In our house, we know some of the triggers that cause Jamie to have certain reactions. So we try to either avoid them, or if they do arise, we have a safety word, I guess you could say.
Right.
And we use the word turn up. And everybody knows that if that's the case, then that person needs to be left alone. They need to deal with what they're dealing until they're ready to come back and either approach it and talk about it, or, just kind of let things be.
Wow. That's an excellent way to do it, for sure. Yeah.
We got a lot of tools in that matter.
Do they really?
Our children definitely use it. Communication.
Yeah.
Always a huge factor. Right? We sit down to a cooked meal once a day. It may not be, the greatest cooked meal. It could be just Kraft dinner, but we sit down at dinner to communicate with each other. There's no phones, there's no TV most times, right? The occasional time we allow it, but we're talking, we're seeing how each other's day are,
Can I ask you something, Shaun?
Yeah, for sure.
Does your wife know your triggers?
Yeah, we talk about it. Like, what I try to do is when something happens, I'll try to, at least as soon as I can, go back to her and tell her what it was that I had trouble with.
Yeah.
And now I can tell you right now that I'm not good at it. I'm a horrible communicator when it comes to, interpersonal relationship communication.
You're not the only one.
That's it kills me. I have no idea how to do it, and I'm learning now how to do it, but it's hard, and I try to, but I'm not great at it yet, but she's a trooper for sure.
There's a big understanding.
Yeah.
I really believe in the PTSD buddy theory. You need that one person to lean on, that one person that can help you. And the weird thing is, when you find that person, a lot of times guilt can eat you up. You feel like you're throwing too much on their plate.
That's right.
I know,
yeah, exactly how you feel.
Like that a lot, but you got to do it. You got to swallow that guilt and realize you're not throwing too much on their plate. That's what they're there for.
Right. Jamie and Vanessa, if my listeners want to get a hold of you guys, how can they do so on social media or otherwise? Like, how do we contact you guys?
Myself, I get a lot of messages through Facebook. You can private message me, I think it's called.
Yeah.
PM.
That's right.
Facebook. I'm also on Twitter.
Okay.
And if you just type in PTSD Buddies on Facebook, our group will come up. There's quite a few of them now. Yeah.
Wow, that's good. Jamie, if you had to, in closing, if you had to give a message to first responders that are listening to this, what would it be?
Don't stop fighting. I know, I know there's people out there who are suffering in silence. They're not talking to anybody, and that's a dead end road. You can't just you'll eat yourself alive. You got to talk to somebody. You got to get a PTSD buddy. I mean, I lived in fear for a long time, but here I am. I went from hiding in my basement in 2007, hiding in my basement in the darkness, hiding from the world, to standing on a stage talking to over 1,000 people about PTSD. I'm living proof that you can beat it. And at the worst, you can learn to live with it. I know my PTSD is still there. It's going to be there forever. I should rephrase that. You don't really beat it. You learn to live with it, though.
Right.
It is possible.
Absolutely. That's a perfect message. I think, people need to hear that. Jamie and Vanessa, I want to thank you so much for joining me today and coming on the podcast. I think you guys are awesome. I think you are a great example of perseverance and strength and how to get through this, not only as an individual, Jamie, but as a couple and as a family. It's amazing. I absolutely love talking to you guys, and I can't thank you enough for coming on. If there's anything that the podcast or me or any of our listeners can ever do to help anything that you're trying to do, please reach out, and I can promise that we'll be there for you for sure.
I appreciate that, and that goes back to you. If PTSD Buddies can ever do anything for you or your podcast, we are here. I mean, that's what PTSD Buddies is all about. We just don't want to help just us. We want to help everyone. We want to combine with all the support that's out there and all work together.
Well, that's great. I wish you guys all the luck in the world, and be safe. And Jamie, hopefully I'll catch up with you when you're here in Halifax.
Sounds good, buddy. Guaranteed.
All right. Thanks again.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Cheers.
And now, it's time for Clinically Speaking with Dr. McGee.
Okay, everyone. The doctor is in. How are you doing, Robin?
I'm good.
Excellent. Today, I would like to talk about EMDR therapy. If you could just teach us what that is and maybe some history on it and how you use it, that would be great.
All right. Well, EMDR stands for, it has a sort of flaky title. The title is Eye Movement Desensitization Reprocessing Therapy. So that's what EMDR stands for.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It's a mouthful. That's right. So we just call it EMDR. And it is, there are two best practice psychotherapies for PTSD as authorized by the American Psychiatric Association and used in their veterans hospitals and so forth. One is the cognitive processing therapy we'll talk about another time.
Okay.
And the other is EMDR. Now, EMDR came onto the scene, I'm going to say about 10, 15 years ago. And it really has changed. From my perspective, it's really changed the therapy for people who've suffered from PTSD, because in my personal view, it's a much more efficient and much more humane approach to therapy than the other model. But the other model does work, so I don't want to knock it. It's just that it's a different process. So let me sort of focus a bit on EMDR and what the theory of that is, or the finding of it. Then part of it is that it was discovered kind of by accident some years ago, that if someone were to make eye movements, sort of right and left eye movements, simultaneous to thinking about a traumatic event, that really significantly reduced the painfulness of the traumatic memory. And so this was found out by the sort of developer of EMDR, Francine Shapiro, and then she found this out on herself by accident. She was walking along, she'd just been diagnosed with cancer, and she was walking along the road in obvious distress, and then as her eyes were sort of moving along because of some sunlight that was coming through a fence, she ended up realizing that she was feeling a lot better about it when she did those eye movements than wasn't. So she was struck by that, studied it, developed a protocol and therapy around it, which has sort of taken the world by storm. There's some people who would actually go as far as to say that they think that she deserves the Nobel Prize. This is such a great advance in therapy.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a bit of the history, and the thought is that the mechanism for that is much the same as the one that governs sleep. So as we know, when we sleep, we go into dreams, and in our dreams, we're processing the sort of detritus of the day. We're processing things and putting them away, and that we're using our eyes, move back and forth. Our brains are processing memories and thoughts when they move back and forth like that. So it's is a deep part of our brain. It's our brains do that. So when in EMDR, it's thought that the use of these eye movements facilitates the processing of traumatic material and in the brain and sort of breaks it down. Remember I talked about it being like digesting a giant Christmas turkey. You couldn't possibly eat all at once, but you could eat in little bites. So
You haven't seen me eat my Christmas dinner. Do it. No, but I know what you mean.
So, right. So anyway, the idea of it helps you digest a trauma in little tiny bits. So
awesome.
If I was going to describe the overarching nature of it, the nature of it is this. It's broken down. The typical protocol is broken down into about 4 main steps. Okay. And this first step involves processing the traumatic memory itself, because most people, when we're talking about traumatic memories, many of these are so upsetting that when people think of them, if we ask them, how much would you rate your upset about that memory on a scale of 10, with 10 being the most distress you can imagine,
Right.
and 0 being neutral or a normal feeling about it, people often say 10, 11, 12. It's a really very upsetting thing to them. And so what we start, the first section of EMDR, it means processing that memory to the point where you go from a 10 out of 10 on upset to a 0 out of 10 on upset. And I can talk a bit in a moment later about how that happens. But then the next piece of EMDR involves, and often when we're harmed or something, go through something traumatic, we're sort of scarred in our identity, or we have a feeling or a thought in our brain about ourselves, like I am helpless, I'm no good, I didn't do enough, I am something bad.
Right.
And there are other thoughts that would be more constructive, more healing, more worthwhile, like I did the best I could, those kinds of thoughts. And so what we're looking for in EMDR is we want a person to feel at a gut level, 7 out of 7 in terms of agreement. We want people to feel what they wish what they want to feel about, what the thought they'd rather have, a positive thought about themselves.
Right.
We want them to get to that point. So process that thought, I did the best I could, or I'm okay the way I am, or I am good enough, I'm lovable, I'm all of these things. These things, we strengthen until the person feels them at a gut level, not just words. You feel it at a gut level, 7 out of 7.
Okay.
Then the final thing we're looking for is a lot of times when people go through traumas, they have, I think I talked about this before on the podcast, that people have a body memory of it. They feel slimed. They feel sick.
Right.
They feel, they have a tension or tightness in their body when they think about the distressing event. And so what we're looking for in EMDR is a feeling of being totally calm and totally clear. So we keep processing until the person has no body memory at all. Like it's just not there. You can't experience it.
Okay.
And then the next part is the last final part of EMDR involves what we call the future template, because most people are afraid of the future. Like, what if I encounter this situation again? What if I am triggered again somehow by a smell or a sight or a whatever? And what we do in EMDR is we process all of that. So we keep going until a person can feel, I can manage. I could walk down that road. I could go to that gravesite. I could go to that hospital. I could do the things that might have otherwise, that I think might upset me or frighten me. So they feel calm and confident about moving forward, given the good work that they've done.
Right.
So that's the whole protocol. There's variants on it. There's special variants. There's variants for people who have addictions. There's variants for people who've had very severe trauma in early childhood. There's a special protocol for people with just anxiety disorders, and there's a special protocol for depression and other illnesses like that. So the application of it is getting better and broader, but there's very strong evidence of its efficacy for post-traumatic stress disorder. That's sort of the first ground of this therapy. So that's where it really, really, really can make a huge difference. And when I talk about its efficiency, my own experience with it, and I think that on average, most people are well satisfied within sort of 8 sessions, in contrast to the other therapies, which often can go on for quite a long time. And
I know people that have, been in it for years.
Yeah, years, and that's not.
And they're not really, they're not really making any headway, to say.
Well, that's the thing. It's what I found about the other therapies. I don't want to diss them because they do work, but what I found in the past, working with PTSD in the past, is that you could talk and talk and talk, but you wouldn't be touching that inner body memory and that core feeling of being injured by what happened. And so what I find with EMDR is that it's exceptionally efficient, exceptionally relieving, and kind of going back to something I've said previously in the podcast about people can with EMDR, I've seen people recover they're not just limping out of the office with,
right.
Marginal mental health. They are glowing with mental health when they leave the office.
Well, yeah, I mean, just for our listeners who, like me before this, this sounds like a bunch of hocus pocus and magic and sci-fi movie. I mean, just to bring it home for people, I went through this myself with you yesterday. And we took on a memory that was really big for me, and it was one of these 10 out of 10 memories. And we had a session, and we worked through these 4 parts, with it. And at the end, it ended up being a 0 for me. And I felt totally refreshed, totally calm. I was able to think about the memory, and it was a normal memory. And I've thought about it since too, like, last night and even this morning. And I don't have the same connections to it as I did before I went in to see you. And that's really, it's fantastic. It's just, I can't believe that just, by going through this, regimented program of repackaging, that it can end up like that. But just so our listeners know, I've done it, and it works. And for me,
it's absolutely remarkable. I can only when you say magic, it almost seems that way, because I've seen people recover from horrendous things that at the beginning of therapy, they'll say, I could never be a 0. I could never ever be a 0 for this dreadful, terrible thing that happened to me or my family. And then when they are a 0, they raise their eyes to you, and they go, I can't believe it. It's a 0. I never ever thought I'd say that. And then the next day, as you say, the next day, the next week, the following weeks, they go, it's still a 0. It's still a 0. It's still a 0.
Very strange. It's
strange, and it's something that you have to experience in some ways to really appreciate the power of it. And I can say that as someone who's undergone it myself. So for years, I did EMDR therapy, and in the training for EMDR therapy, therapists have to practice on each other. So you have to have something in your background that you have to work through. And I didn't have anything super huge to work through. And then I had had brutal treatments for late stage cancer, and that was very traumatic for me. So I went for my own EMDR counseling for it. And again, memories, I thought that could never ever be a 0. They're stories to me now. They're just stories. I could tell them 10 times and not freak out. But there was a time when I would just dissolve thinking about the things I went through, and had a lot of the body memories attached to that kind of physical trauma of getting burned and all the rest of the stuff that happens in cancer treatment. But and as I think I've said before earlier on this podcast, as many as 30% of cancer patients have PTSD as a result of the diagnosis and the treatment. So I can say, as a giver of it and as a recipient of it, I can say it's just a remarkable therapy that really is remarkably healing, and it
really is. It's fantastic. I can't say enough about it. Thank you for teaching me and our listeners about it. Robin, I was wondering, do you have a story of hope for us today?
Yeah, I want to make sure I haven't told the same story before, but this is a story. It's not a first responder story, but it's a story to convey the effectiveness of EMDR. And it was a time in which I treated a woman who had been raped on Canada Day. Did I tell you about this case? No. This was a young woman who had been 20 years or so before she came to see me. She'd been brutally raped on Canada Day, and then stalked by the rapist for many years after that. So it was a dreadful, dreadful, terrorizing experience. So this woman, every day when Canada Day came around on the anniversary, she would just go to bed for 3 days and cry her eyes out. And, she was, when her kids would want to go to Canada Day parades or whatever, she couldn't have anything to do with that. She just couldn't. She was just, Canada Day was just not, even the symbols of Canada, looking at the flags, looking at the, any of that, it would just send her.
Right.
And so she wanted to work on this because it was hurting her, it was hurting her marriage, it was hurting in a lot of ways. So after 20 years of carrying that around, she came for therapy, and we worked through that. And so again, something, I remember this really, really clearly, that when she got to a 0, she she was astonished. She was completely astonished, saying, I can't believe I'm at a 0. I cannot believe this. And then we went through the rest of the protocol, and then we follow up after many weeks, and she'd come in and she would, as I say, glowing with mental health, she would say, not only did I go to the Canada Day parade, I had my kids had the Canada flag face painted on their cheeks. I loved it. It was wonderful. My sex life is back to normal now. I'm happy. My husband's happy. And every single person I see who I know who's gone through tough times, I say, you've got to try this therapy. So she became not only a healthy, thriving person, but she was able to reclaim this part of her life. And, she said she was a very patriotic Canadian. She really, really enjoyed Canada Day again. And she was able to take it back, but more importantly, take back her sense of herself as a safe person, a strong person, a person who, where this dreadful thing that happened to her was, as we say, to her became a chapter in the book of her life, but it was not the whole book. And that's how it felt.
Wow. That's fantastic. That's the perfect story for this episode. I'm sure of it. Robin, I want to thank you very much again, and you're getting ready to hit it on a trip for a couple weeks.
Yeah, off to the Grand Canyon.
The Grand Canyon, awesome. Well, I hope you have a great trip, and we'll be in touch when you get back. And have a safe trip. Take care of yourself, and we'll talk to you again next month.
Talk to you then.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you are a first responder on Facebook, my next guest should not be a stranger to you. You may not know him by name, but I'm certain that you've seen his work. Hashtag I've Got Your Back 911. I'm really pleased to introduce you to Shaun Taylor. How you doing, Shaun?
Hey, Shaun. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm great. Thank you for making the time, Shaun. Before we get into the movement itself, which has taken Facebook by storm, maybe just give our listeners a little bit of information about you.
All right. Well, currently right now I'm a PCP. I'm a paramedic in Elgin County and in Chatham, Kent. I've been there for just about 5 years now, and previous to that, I was a surgical specialist for a couple of medical device companies for about 12 years. So kind of lived in the OR, and next progression for me was to get into paramedicine, which is what I always wanted to do. So I kind of took the dive, and I thought to myself, you know what, if I'm going to do it, I got to do it now. So I kind of bit the bullet, went back to school. I did the accelerated program. I got it done, and I was lucky enough to get hired on in Elgin pretty much right away.
Oh, nice.
So that's kind of where I came from, and then myself and one of my partners, Jill Foster, who also works in Elgin, and she works in Bruce County in Ontario. We basically, sat down and, we were just kind of tired of hearing about all the deaths and the suicides amongst first responders, and literally over some nachos and a couple beers, we were writing on bar napkins and kind of writing out ideas. And then we were doing searches and see if anything came up on the internet anywhere. And it probably took us about 12 or 13 different ideas. And I've Got Your Back 911, was born. And a couple days later, we launched it. Within about 3 to 4 days, it just went viral. And originally, our whole concept was to basically let the campaign run itself if it was going to do anything, and we were going to basically stay out of it. No face, no name, no nothing to it. We just wanted the focus to be on the campaign, first responders, PTSD. But after about 5 days, we literally had over 300 messages sent to us.
Wow.
Basically looking to see who was behind this, and people basically demanding to figure out who's doing this, who's running this, who started this. And so we were basically forced to kind of push ourselves into that bit of a limelight, and it's been a whirlwind ever since.
Absolutely. Now, had you had any personal experience with PTSD? Is that why you sort of started looking at this movement and trying to provide this service?
No, not me personally. I'd be remiss to say that if I didn't have a couple calls throughout my short career so far, that I can't sit and, remember second by second, actually hear voices and everything else. It doesn't keep me awake at night by any means. It doesn't give me nightmares. Actually, awesome. You know what? It puts a smile on my face because I know that I did everything that I could during those couple calls. But, so personally myself, I haven't, experienced it. but, I know a lot of my coworkers that have, and then just basically seeing the astronomical number of deaths that were starting to happen, and we're coming to the limelight. So that's kind of where we started, and that was our premise behind it.
Awesome, Shaun. Like, what is your vision for this movement? What is it you hope to accomplish with it?
Well, you know what? It's kind of a
probably evolved.
It's kind of a fluid movement in the fact that this is a live document that we've created, and we're just trying to steer this thing in the right direction. We've made some great gains in Ontario, and I really like to think that we had an awful lot to do with that, as well as an awful lot of other people and organizations like TEMA and everything else. But Alberta, made some great strides, and frankly, this needs to be something that's national across our country. This needs to be something that is global throughout, the United States and whatever other country. We're getting pictures and stuff sent to us from all over this world, from Thailand to Australia to Holland, from Germany. It's just crazy the amount of people that this has reached. So I guess my ultimate goal would be to make PTSD a household name with first responders, and just basically, make people understand that, the people that are coming to save them possibly in their time of need may be sick and hurting themselves. And I don't think anybody really wants to look at it in that context. Right. So the awareness and change. We need to have every province in this country take care of our first responders. It's so long overdue.
It is, for sure it is. And I know that for me here in Nova Scotia, we got to give the government a little slight nudge towards it. They don't seem to be focused as much as they should on it, but we need to make the similar changes to WCB, Workmen's Compensation Board, and the presumptive benefits section.
Absolutely.
Need change.
When it comes down to just that in itself. Ever since this campaign started up until, 3-4 weeks ago when Kevin Flynn made that announcement, Kevin Flynn was getting probably anywhere between 5 to 10 emails from our campaign every single week. We've got thousands of stories that have been sent in to us, from horrific stories with a lot of tragedy to a lot of success stories where people have persevered and, they've been able to get back to work and get their life back on track. But to date, since we launched just under a year and a half ago, we've had 17 suicide letters sent to us, and the majority of them would contain a will from that person that sent it to us.
Wow. I can't even imagine what it would be like to receive that.
It just makes my jaw drop every time it happens. The last one that we got was a paramedic in Ohio. The short premise of it is, he sent it after midnight hoping that we weren't going to get it. He had a bunch of pills set up downstairs. He went to bed and he was going to get up halfway through the night and take almost 300 pills. I was working a night shift that night, and so was Jill. We both called each other as soon as we saw it come through and called dispatch. We got a phone number for the sheriff's office in Ohio, gave him the medic's name. Sure enough, 2 days later, I get a call from his wife, and she was crying and basically saying that, if we wouldn't have called and we wouldn't have intervened that night, her kids would not have a father, she would not have a husband, and that's the only reason why he's alive. So at about 1:15 in the morning, there's knocks on the door, there's flashlights coming through the window, and it's the police, and they ended up taking him in. He got assessed, they changed his meds. Last report, he was doing fantastic. So, but wow. I'll tell you,
what a story that is.
You never get used to that, especially when I'm reading it. And, I've got contact information for his wife, for his parents, and his full will there is for all of his kids.
Holy.
That's 17.
Wow.
Yeah.
How does that, now, knowing that happened, does that change the way you think about the page though, as far as monitoring it? Because, does it enter into your mind that if you didn't receive that message, or if someone didn't find it,
yeah, what? It puts a lot of things into perspective, I'll tell you.
Wow.
Me and Jill, we're not professionals when it comes to counseling, to dealing with people with PTSD. We're doing the best that we can, but you know what? We're medics. We're on the road. We're just like every other first responder out there. And I think that's what really attracts a lot of people to our page.
Yeah.
But when it comes right down to it, you know what? It's a humbling experience to even see that. When you have a medic that committed suicide, I wake up at 5:00 in the morning to get ready for a 7 a.m. shift, and I have an email sitting in my inbox from a lady by the name of Dorothy, and I don't know any Dorothy in my daily routine, my daily life. And when I open it up, it's a lady that is probably going through one of the worst, if not the worst, tragedy in her life with her son, who just committed suicide, and he was a medic. And within 24 hours of this tragedy, she felt compelled to send us an email to explain what happened and how much she cherishes our campaign. They all have our clothing. They all wear them with pride. But it just didn't come along soon enough to be able to save her son. That, for me, is mind-boggling that she thought of us and to send us an email in this time. Like, I still, to this day, can't get my head around that. So.
I haven't been speechless yet on this podcast, and I'm just trying, to understand what you're telling me. I'm just, it just sets me back a second. The weight of that is phenomenal.
It's unbelievable. And the same family asked us to rush them a whole bunch of our clothing, so that the entire family could wear it during the funeral. To the extent that, when there's a first responder in the area that is, unfortunately committed suicide, we're getting invitations by the family to go to the funeral itself. I don't know how to process that. I don't know what to think about that. Have I done it? Yes, I have. And I've done it not because they asked me to. I've done it just in the pure condolences aspect and paying my respects to that first responder that has been a first responder for 21 years. And for whatever reason he made the choice that he made, that's where I'm showing up. But we're getting invitations, on that level. And that in itself is mind-boggling to me as well. So every day.
There's no truer form of respect that you're seeing, or form of impact that you're seeing when you can see that, that, your message is getting out there for
Absolutely. Sure. Absolutely. And, sometimes it just amazes me, on a daily basis, how big this campaign actually is. When we post, something on our Facebook page, and within 5 days it goes to 1.3 million people. That's staggering.
That is staggering. Holy, those are big numbers.
Yeah.
Huge numbers.
I know.
Is there any way, is there anything that you need from, the listeners, or what can we do to further your movement and to help you guys along?
Well, you know what? We're always looking, first and foremost, everything that we bring into the campaign, me and Jill turn back around into the campaign and we donate it to various charities. We just got finished setting up a charitable fund that, even after both myself and Jill are gone in 40 years or whatever that looks like, this fund will still be there, and it'll still be donating to the charities that we have set up and chosen, and also to the parameters that we've set up for this fund, which is basically first responders and, those suffering from PTSD. So we've just got finished setting that up, which is, I love the fact that we have that. We're getting, we've got some service dogs that we've sponsored. I think, basically, looking at the campaign, following the campaign, putting your 2 cents worth in, because again, me and Jill are not perfect. We're trying to run this thing the best we can, but we're always looking for ideas, whether it's stuff that you want to see in our online store, whether it's, a different charity that we maybe haven't thought of that we may want to donate to. Right. So we're always looking to put on programs for certain areas. We're working on some stuff actually out in the East Coast right now, where we may be coming out there and helping to run a couple programs for some of the emergency personnel out in the East Coast. So, which is very exciting for us.
Nice.
So, what can people do? Follow the campaign. They want to donate to the campaign. That's fantastic. But basically, it's awareness, man. Spread the word, and we need this change to happen all over this country and all over, the globe. We need this changed.
Now, you mentioned the online store, so we've a lot of us have seen the clothing. If you just talk about your store for a few moments.
Yeah, for sure. Basically we've got a local printer in Elgin County that does all of our stuff for us. And the reason we went that way, after experiencing some stuff with Teespring online, is, you know, we're able to sell stuff less expensive for people, have better quality, and also we have full creative rights on anything that we want to do. You know, we're always looking to sponsor, put our logo, put our name on stuff. So by all means, if you got something coming in or you got an event coming on, just reach out to us. But our online store, we're always looking to add stuff. We've got everything from, you know, hoodies, t-shirts. We've got, you know, we're looking at bringing in some, you know, workouts, you know, Razorback shirts.
Yeah.
We've got those backboard keychains, which are huge. We've got challenge coins that we've made. We're looking at bringing on some travel mugs. So there's just so much stuff on there. It's crazy.
And so does a portion of those sales go to your charities? Is that how
everything does?
Everything does?
Yep.
Nice. Wow.
Yep.
That's so great. If our listeners want to reach out to you at all, where can they find you at?
Well, the easiest way to do it is, you know, you can send us an email, and it goes right through to, you know, I've got your back 911 at outlook.com is an email that comes to both myself and Jill. You can message us on Facebook. We've got our Facebook page. You can get through to us on Twitter. You can get through to us on Instagram. So we're highly accessible by all means. And if we don't get back to you right away, please have some patience, because a lot of times it's 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning in between calls.
Right.
We're riding in the truck and we're responding to stuff, and we get back to base and we're answering stuff. So just have a little bit of patience. We do the best we can with getting back to everybody, but rest assured that when you get something back from our campaign, it's not coming from a customer service rep. It's not coming from somebody that's there just answering messages.
Right.
Those messages are all coming from myself or Jill.
That's awesome. Shaun, if you were to, you know, if you had a message for the first responders in this country who may be struggling with PTSD or, you know, aren't thankfully struggling right now, but may face it in the future, do you have a message for them?
You know what? I think the biggest thing, Shaun, is the fact that, you know, you got to look at this. This is a new era. This isn't the old boys club where you're not allowed to talk about it anymore. Right. And, you know, because that just shows weakness. We're in a new era now where this has now come to the forefront and people are actually being able to talk about it. You know that you're not alone. Reach out to somebody, speak to one of your peers. You know, you're seeing different things implemented in different services now as this movement is going on and the changes are being made from a provincial level to hopefully a federal level. But you have to speak to people. You got to reach out, because there is light at the end of the tunnel. People can persevere. Just, you know, you're not alone. I think that's the biggest thing. You're not alone. You got to talk.
For sure. That's the biggest hurdle. I keep saying is just to talk.
Yep.
And that's the point of all this and what we're trying to do. Shaun, I can't thank you enough for making time after your shift to talk to us. And on behalf of myself and the podcast and first responders that are listening, I want to thank you for what you're doing. I knew it was a huge movement, but I didn't know just how huge or quite the impact of what you were doing over there with your page. And I just wanted to say thank you, and you're awesome. And, you and Jill both, and please don't stop what you're doing. And if there's anything that myself or the podcast or our listeners can ever do to help your movement or, help you guys in any way, please reach out and we will be there for you for sure.
This is definitely helping right here, Shaun, by, inviting me to come on to the podcast and, being able to speak frank with you and to see how many listeners you have and the followers that you have. This is a huge step for us too. So, and however we can get together and collaborate and work together to get this message out, that's what it's all about. You know what? It's all about all these separate groups, organizations coming together, whether it's grassroots like we are, whether it's, big foundations, whatever it is.
Right.
You know what? We all got to keep rowing the boat in the same direction. There's no sense in fighting each other and pushing and pulling. Everything's got to be going in the same direction. And I think that's power. That's huge. There's thousands and thousands of us in this country that do what we do. And you know what? We're a big voice.
Certainly. For sure we are. Shaun, be safe. Much respect to you guys and much love, and be safe on your shifts and in your personal life. And thanks again. Hopefully maybe we can have you on again in the future and talk more about how much bigger this movement has gotten even since now.
All right. That sounds fantastic. I look forward to it. And again, thanks a lot, Shaun, for inviting me on. It's been a pleasure of mine to come on here. And, let's just keep up this movement and, Nova Scotia's next, right?
Absolutely. Thanks, man.
Okay.
All right. All the best.
Thanks.
All right, folks, that wraps up another episode of the podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it half as much as I enjoyed doing it. It was a really fun episode to put together. I'd like to thank Rest Ed Seminars, Dan Sun Photography, and the Compass Rose Health and Wellness Center for sponsoring the podcast. A huge shout out and thank you to MP Todd Doherty, Jamie and Vanessa McWhirter, and Shaun Taylor for joining us on this episode of the podcast. Really enjoyed the chats I had with them. As always, you can reach me at uptalkpodcast@gmail.com, on Twitter at uptalkpodcast, on Facebook at the UpTalk Podcast Facebook page. Please reach out. Please let me know what you like, what you don't like, what you want to hear about, especially for Dr. Robin McGee if there's an issue, subject that you'd like her to talk to us about. Please let us know if you have any ideas for guests. Let us know who you would like to hear from, as we need your engagement in order to make this thing work. Also, on that note, if you are someone who subscribes to this podcast on iTunes or Podcast Republic, or if you stream it from YouTube, please take a second and provide a review and leave some feedback on those sites, as that helps the podcast get recognized and helps us grow this community as big as we can. I'd like to remind everybody of the UpTalk Challenge at this time. It came up a few times during our chats, the need to have someone you can talk to. So the UpTalk Challenge is for all of you to find someone that you trust and make a pact with them that if you ever find yourself feeling like you want to do harm to yourself, reach out to that person in any way. Let them know that you're in that space right now, you're in that headspace, and you need some help. Please do that. I've done it. Please do it. We have to stop this tragedy of losing our brothers and sisters. We need to get all of us the help that we deserve. So please remember that, and please do that, and share that. Until next time, guys, I'd like to say that I hope you are all safe, and stay safe, and all the best in everything that you do. Until it's time to chat again.
'Cause we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people, trying to make the difference, and the first on every scene. And it's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this hurting when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone, it keeps going on. When those sirens are gone.